So this game was ugly. The Cardinals lost by a score of 44-21 to the Kansas City Chiefs. Fans had a lot of concerns coming into this game, and it looked like those concerns were valid. So here are my 5 observations from the game. First, the offense was rusty. On the Cardinals' first offensive play, they let the clock run all the way down to 0, barely got the snap off, looked confused, and ended up drawing a flag for an illegal shift. Going into a game, you usually expect your first series of plays to be scripted. Now, I know Kyler had to make adjustments to the line because of the defense, and that's part of the reason they went all the way up to the end of the play clock. But the combination of nearly having a delay of game penalty, looking confused, and then drawing a penalty for an illegal shift was just a bad look for the Cardinals. They just didn't look prepared. And the offense looked rusty through most of the game. Kyler made a few plays here and there, but the offense just seemed out of sorts. Some of it was execution, some of it was the game plan, and a lot of fans are now really seriously calling into question the strategy of resting players during the preseason. But as rusty as they looked, and as much as they still ended up having players injured anyway, you do have to wonder maybe they should start playing their players at least through 1/4 of the preseason. And as much as the offense looked rusty, the defense looked flat out bad. They weren't good in any facet of the game. They didn't really have a consistent pass rush. They weren't good in coverage. They weren't really great against the run. They just struggled across the board. Now, we kind of knew they were going to struggle against Patrick Mahomes. He is a great quarterback. That's a great offense. The Cardinals had some players missing on defense in terms of injuries. They're playing some young players. And as good as Mahomes and the Chiefs are on offense, maybe I would have been able to live with that if it weren't for the fact that the offense really just didn't show up. If this had been a shootout with both offenses going back and forth, I think most Cardinals fans would have taken that. But to have the defense play poorly and the offense look that rusty was definitely very frustrating. My third observation is that the offensive line struggled a lot. In fact, I think that might have been the biggest reason the Cardinals got blown out. Kyler was under pressure for most of the game. He did manage to evade some of that rush and make some plays with his legs, but it was hard to get an offensive rhythm going with all that pressure. That made it even harder to sustain drives. The offensive line wasn't the only problem. There were other breakdowns on offense, but that I think was one of the biggest keys to why the offense struggled. My fourth takeaway is that Kyler wasn't really the problem today. He wasn't great, but he didn't turn the ball over. He completed 64.7% of his passes, had 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, had some nice plays with his legs. He didn't take over the game, but he wasn't the reason the Cardinals lost. Yes, Kyler is capable of playing better, but they weren't going to win if he didn't get some help on defense and with other players on offense. My last takeaway is this is week 1, and week 1 is kind of weird. I know fans are frustrated. They want to kick dirt on the grave of this team, but a lot of teams come out and struggle in week 1. Last year, the Cardinals blew out the Titans, and that Titans team went on to go 12-5 and win their division. I'm not saying the Cardinals are going to go 12-5, and I'm not even saying they don't have problems they need to address. What I am saying is that week 1 is not a good barometer for any team. Teams have looked really bad in week 1 and gone on to have good seasons, and vice versa. Let's see how they look over the next couple of games before we completely write off this season. But make no mistake about it, some things definitely have to change from what happened this week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on The Cardinal Rule.